What if our darkest days were actually the beginning of something extraordinarily wonderful? What if those moments when we feel completely empty and broken are the very times we uncover a profound inner strength we never knew existed? And what if our personal journey through suffering and healing could become a beacon of hope and transformation for others? Former Special Forces Commando Tim Thomas embodies all of these questions. Through some of the most harrowing and challenging experiences of his life, Tim discovered that within every human being lies a reservoir of unseen power. A power capable of not only healing ourselves, but also inspiring grace, generosity, understanding, and forgiveness. Tim's story is one of resilience, redemption, and the incredible capacity of the human spirit to overcome and uplift. Tim is such a compassionate man, and I hope you enjoy his story as much as I did. Tim, thank you so much for coming here today to chat with me. And I just want to say, so I met you in April last year at the airport in Brisbane, and it was so strange because I was in a hurry, like I always am, and I went past you, and then I just thought, oh, I'm going to stop and go back because you had the table there with the other two old gentlemen, and went back and I got talking to you, and I bought some Anzac Day pins. It was just before Anzac Day, and then you told me about this amazing book that you have, Fight, Flight, Feel, and I said to you then, oh, would you let me interview you one day? And you said, oh, of course you would. So, but you just had. And after I left you, I went down and checked in and everything, and I rang my husband and I said, I just met this man who just is incredible. And you just had this aura of strength and power, but just generosity and just something really special. Anyway, so I'm really glad that
I'm going to pay her money for this.
But it's true, and you don't often come across people like that just have this light shining within them. So, and from out of them. So that was why I went back, and I'm very glad I did. I'm very glad you're sitting here today to share all your wisdom. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Humbled to get that kind of introduction, and it's just sort of presents me. It hasn't always been like that, you know. And I hope, and I really hope that this, you know, production is going to give people the things that we needed when we were in those dark places. Because my light wasn't always shining,
No.
you know, and I went down a lot of paths that were, I thought were the right ones and the wrong ones, and to hear someone's perspective from the outside when there's been times in the past where it could have been very differently. So you know, what Kelly was talking about was we raise money for our local sub branch. It's a sub branch that does provide services for veterans. We don't do pokies or bars, we just sell badges, and you were kind enough to, you know, buy a badge today to support us, but I also sell my book to support, you know, the same sort of cause. And yeah, the older I get, the more I realize it's not what we do that adds value to others, it's what we've come through. And my goal in the veteran space was to save 40 veteran lives from suicide, because that's how many Australian forces we've lost in Afghanistan. Some of them were closer to me than brothers, but when we get back home, what a lot of people don't know is we've lost 20 to 30 times that amount to suicide. So I thought, I'm going to work the rest of my life. I'll die happy if I save 40 defence personnel from suicide. But that was actually achieved within 12 months because of two things that I saw in the healing space that no one else saw. Now, I'm actually dyslexic, fun fact, so I miss a lot of stuff, but then I'll see things that no one else sees. And what I saw that wasn't being addressed was how pain works. Pain, it doesn't matter if it's physical or emotional, it'll get to a certain duration or intensity where it transforms from just being pain to loneliness, isolation. I am the only one going through this. And in that moment, that's the beginning of the end. and the person experiencing the pain, they don't know they're going through it. They just know that they can't tell anyone about it because it's so painful. They don't want to burden, other people. And, they live that way for a certain duration, and they say, okay, what do I know about my life? I know that I'm in pain. I can see I'm causing pain to others. And if they look into the future, they can honestly say, I can't see that changing. And that is so dangerous, because at that low point, and I've been there, they say, I've got a really good idea. I'm going to end the pain. I'm going to end the pain for me. I'm going to end the pain to you. I'm going to do everyone a favour by removing myself.
And you were nearly one of those statistics, weren't you? Tim, so you were a commando in the army. So talk me through that, because you didn't actually apply till you were 30, which...
Correct.
So, did you...
Yeah.
There must have been people thought, this old codger.
Well, I did pick up the nickname Old Man Tomo. And yes, they had what's called a DRSF scheme, direct recruiting into special forces. So it provided you pass the physical, mental, aptitude, IQ, psychological test, you could get in. And I was the oldest allowable age at 30 to get in. And everyone was telling me, you're too old, blah, 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 blah. But again, being dyslexic, I saw something that possibly other people haven't seen. And that is, this was the first time I'd actually aged. This is the first time I was ever 30. And anyone listening to this, draw that to yourself. Like, this is the first time you've been that age. So shouldn't it be us deciding what we can and can't do at that age? So, and I realized other people telling me I can't do it, that's just them saying out loud that they can't do it. And you know what? They might have tried something like this and they've gotten hurt in the process. So they're trying to, in all love, discourage me but save me from some kind of pain that they've experienced. So when someone's trying to talk you out of your dreams, they're often trying to save you the pain they experienced when they got hurt after chasing their dreams or whatever that looks like. So stepping that to one side, 5,000 to 10,000 people applied for this scheme. 70 were accepted. I was in that initial intake in 2004 January that we got actually accepted, and of that 70, there was plenty of guys younger, fitter, faster, stronger than I was, but less than 15 got through to the end. A lot of resistance in the army to this new scheme, because to get into the special forces, you had to spend 2 years in a regular infantry battalion before you could even apply. So we were considered these civilian queue jumpers. So we were not welcome. They tried to break the scheme. They didn't want it to work. We've got a 300% more injury statistic at our basic training level. And yeah, so it was a very proud moment for me to actually make it through to the end. The best thing that ever happened to us was Afghanistan, because when we actually proved what we could do in battle, then all the other people were like, oh, this is actually a really good scheme. These guys can do the job. And so that scheme is actually still in place to this day.
That's amazing. So, Tim, Afghanistan precipitated or led you to where you are today, and there was one particular night that you faced death and you thought you were going to die. So could you just talk me through that and what happened? And
Sure. Okay, so you're talking about, we were heading into an RPG ambush, and
what does that mean?
Okay, rocket propelled grenade ambush. So they had grenade launchers, and the enemy had been doing it for a long time. They knew that we had to go through that area, and it's nothing new. It's kind of almost a daily occurrence. So what normally happens is the rear vehicle is always the one that's attacked. So they put all the heavily armored vehicles to the rear of the convoy, and on this, because the rear vehicle is least defended, that's always the one that gets the hit. And these heavily armored vehicles, they can take hits all day, no problem. But the vehicle I was in was just I think of a four-wheel drive with the roof cut off with machine guns. And we, in the rush before getting to the kill box, we got cut off, and we were the rear vehicle going into this ambush. And we're all experienced soldiers. We all knew what was up. My vehicle commander looked back and said, "Fellas, if this goes the way I think it will, it's been an honour serving with you." And, you know, I wasn't scared to die, but I was mad as hell because in my mind at that time, the guy that cut us off was trying to save his own ass. And so I was so angry, and in my anger, like, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm seeing my own ramp ceremony where they carry the body of the soldier down the ramp of the airplane, Australian flag over it. I saw my weeping widow, my kids, and I'm like, it's this guy's fault. And I didn't, like, I've got a faith-based background, but I didn't go to God. I went to a place, I asked, this question came to me that changed the night and changed pretty much my life from there on in. And that was this: Tim, who do you know who has done this before, and how did they get through it? Because I was feeling all alone and isolated. Who did I know that's done this before? And the fact was, I didn't know anyone. And, you know, the night started to close in. Australia seemed really far away. And I felt like really alone. But here's the thing. It was at that moment I started thinking outside my current timeline. I started thinking about the Anzacs. And then I'm like, what did those guys do coming up that beach in Gallipoli? They kept moving forward. The outside world could not stop them from seeing the power inside them. And that's like 100 years ago, right? So it was like this portal in time opened up. And these Anzacs came through and poked me in the chest saying, Tim, you know, lest you forget the power inside of you, lest you forget the power of looking after your mates. And I tell you, it was like night turned into day.
It was very real to you too, wasn't it? Because you talked about initially with that question that you actually heard it as a whisper. It just wasn't in your mind, you heard it, and then you felt them.
Yeah, I literally felt, instead of lest we forget, lest you forget. And that was a tipping point. And that's when I realized, you know, I mentioned it earlier, pain makes you feel isolated. It's the loneliness and isolation that shuts everything off. And then everything gets hard, because everything is hard. Because we're only functioning at 2%. But if we've got each other's backs, then all of a sudden, all our higher thinking kicks in. Some pretty cool things happened. I literally saw my circulatory system jump out in front of me, and I saw it like a road map. I saw blood going from the heart, down the arms, up to the legs, up to the brain. And I'm like, the only thing I need to keep positive pressure on is the brain. That's the only critical part here. So if I can lose a limb, this is going to be an RPG attack, that's fine. I'll just put a hose clamp on it, put a tourniquet on it, and then that'll keep positive pressure on the brain. That's the most important thing. I don't have to worry about like an infection or something, right? And we're going about 35 k's an hour. These RPGs, they self-destruct at 1,500 meters. So they're probably going to start shooting us between 8 and 1,200 meters. And I worked out the arcs, 35 k's an hour. We're going to be in the kill box for 3 to 5 minutes. And I'm like, okay, I can work with that, because even if I bleed out and die, my mates are going to be able to revive me with a saline drip. So, you know, if you've ever done that trust exercise where you close your eyes and fall back and someone catches you, well, like I was trusting these guys to hold me back from the gates of hell, you know. And that's what happens. That's when the training kicks in. But I never would have accessed that if I stayed in my state of anger, I'm right, you're wrong. You know, I never would have gotten above that. But it took that breaking the isolation. That's what started the cascade of all these really cool things. And with all that unlocked, something went through my head. And I thought, you know what, just before we about hit the kill box, I said, you know what? They might find my dead body in 5 minutes' time. But you know what they're not going to find? Magazines full of bullets. I'm emptying all ammunition on this one. And I'm like, that's not a bad way to live, Tim, because whether you're dying in 5 minutes or 50 years, your magazines contain simple bullets. But your mind, everyone's listening's mind, contains something much more powerful than bullets. They contain ideas, hopes, dreams. Why die without them all fired off? You know, it doesn't matter if you don't hit your targets. You get rid of that stuff. And I thought, yeah, if I get through this, I think I need to share that.
So what happened?
Well, everyone got my bits with me, and it was pretty unspectacular. It didn't. This is. I've been into worse firefights, but that one was a fizzer. It was but the unique thing about that one was we had time and awareness beforehand. So when the bullets start coming in, you're like, you just switch in. You get this, your mind and body connect, and nothing else matters except, you don't even know your own name. You're just connected to those people around you. But it's the beforehand, when you've got a chance to think, that's like the worst things come out. When it actually happens, everything clicks into gear. So that was that. Like, we'd been rocketed, shot at, ambushed heaps of times, but that one particular occasion was the only chance I had to actually have an awareness of what was happening beforehand, and then watch this dance inside of myself. But I will speak. There was something that happened that night. So being a soldier, you think I'm used to fear. I never really got used to fear, but because I was exposed to it so much, I got a really good understanding of how fear works. And fear has a goal for everybody. And it's not actually to scare you. Fear's ultimate goal is to immobilize you, to stop you from even moving, trying, or thinking that anything you can physically do is going to be of any use. And if you understand that's the actual goal of fear, you realize you actually get rid of fear. The opposite of fear isn't love, it's action. Taking action dispels fear, because it's really real. Fear is real. It's definitely there. But the second you take action is the second it disappears. And I just invite everybody to the image I have is fear is a perfect boot-sized puddle, or a foot-sized puddle, footprint-sized puddle. And the second you step into that, it just dispels. So yeah, taking action gets rid of fear. Conversely, inaction, procrastination, whatever you want to call it, grows fear. And so going into that ambush, I was flicking between, freaking ready to go, right? And then, oh my gosh, this is terrible. So I took an action that night. That was my go-to for every event that I was sort of fearful in, and that was simple singing. I sang a particular song.
What was the song?
I tell you, I'll give you the first verse. It's been a while since I've sung it. I normally only sing this at the request of a senior digger on Anzac Day or Remembrance Day, but I'll give you the first line. I mean, the acoustics in here could be better. I mean, I'm just kidding. But I'll give you the first line, because this genuinely happened, and this action genuinely dispelled fear. And I used to sing it again and again. When I was a young man, I carried a pack, and I lived the free life of a rover. From the Murray's green banks to the dusty outback, I waltzed me Matilda all over. Then in 1915 my country said, son, no time for roving, there's work to be done. And they gave me a tin hat, and they gave me a gun, and they sent me away to the war. And the band played Waltzing Matilda as the ship pulled away from the quay. And amidst all the cheers, flag waving and tears, we sailed off for Gallipoli.
That's haunting in here, but I just imagine how haunting that would be where you were. Just amazing. Do Do you ever think that night that you were taken to the edge of that horror to open you up to that inner knowing, so that when you came back you could teach people what you learned and how you get through those really tough times? Did that ever occur to you in those moments?
Not at the time. Not at the time, because you're all going through it. You think it's normal, but then when I get out and I'm going through my own undiagnosed PTSD, I had an experience that then had me. I could either become a villain or a hero. And I started to see the context of all the stuff that I'd gone through, because you go through it and it's just what you're going through, right? Everyone's doing it, and you don't see it as anything special. But then when you reach rock bottom, you can either, there's two ways to go. You're either hero or villain. And so I got out in 2010 and 2011 with undiagnosed PTSD, family's falling apart, my head's all over the shop, not sleeping. I didn't know what was going on. And, in a world where you don't understand, the world tells you to go see a psychologist. And it was April 2011. And I was about to kill a man, okay? Government wasn't paying me. This would have been murder. And at the end of, I told this psychologist everything that I'd seen in service and all the troubles I was seeing outside of service and all the stuff I didn't understand. He goes, "Oh, you think it was a problem with your mum and dad?" And that's when everything in the room just stopped. The tick, tick, tick of the clock, right? And I became very aware of everything in that room. And I saw his glass frame psychology degree. And in my state of disconnect, it made a lot of sense to grab that glass frame psychology degree and feed it down his throat, because this guy is supposed to be a healer. He's not just not healing, he's causing harm. So in my state, I'm like, it makes a lot of sense to remove this guy. So I get out of my chair to do this, okay? And I feel this hand in my chest and the words red flag. And like, "Tim, you are the toughest guy you know. How many other people are struggling in a system that seems to want to keep you sick?" And I didn't know what to do, but I sat back down. But that's when I saw him. I saw people, thousands left and right of me, looking in, saying, "Tim, if you can find a way forward for you, you can find a way forward for us." Okay? And this is that's when my isolation got broken. And I just said, "Look, it doesn't matter if it takes me a week, a month, a decade. I get a feeling that if I can find a way forward, that's the amount of time I'm going to be able to save all these others." So I then started, there's a really good saying, if you want to see God, reveal him to others. If you want to feel God's love, give God's love to others. So I went about working in veteran charities like Mates for Mates. I started working in research facilities like Gallipoli Medical Research here at Green Slopes Hospital in Brisbane. And it was incredible. It was like all the crap that I'd seen was preparing me for this one conversation with this one veteran, and their jaw would pop open like this, and they would say words to the effect of, "Fuck, I thought I was the only one going through it." And this is what wasn't happening in the healing space. No one actually saw what pain did. And there's millions of dollars of resources going into veteran recovery, but if you don't break their isolation, it's just water off a duck's back. They don't know who to trust. Okay, they'll go to the psychologist to keep their missus happy or whatever. But I understood the breaking the isolation, but also if you're feeling isolated and alone, it's very fatiguing to be in. No one's got your back. Everything's a threat. You can't sleep. You can't drop your guard. If you drop your guard for a second, something bad's going to happen. And I noticed if you broke someone's fatigue, if you broke someone's isolation, got them out of fatigue, then it was like this golden compass turned on inside of them. And they knew exactly what they needed to do, and they had all the energy to do it. But they couldn't do it feeling alone. They couldn't do it feeling fatigued. So as much as I wasn't a trained counsellor, I'm like, this is working, just keep doing it. This is working, just keep doing it. And I measured the success of all my veteran programs by one very critical element, and that was how much it improved the quality of their sleep. Because I just noticed you improve someone's sleep, everything improves. And that sort of has become my vision now. I can't do what you do, but if I can improve the quality of your sleep, you're going to be able to bring your gifts into the world better. Yeah.
We'll get back to that in a second, Tim, but while we're still in Afghanistan,
Yeah.
I really want to ask you about when you were the Brubitch.
Oh,
Because I just love this story. So please
Okay.
share it, because
All right.
I think it's you talk about ego in the book, and just you had no ego when you were the Brubitch.
sure. Well, I didn't just wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to be the Brubitch. I was incredibly fatigued beyond the point of any kind of recollection. And I just noticed that if I did deep breaths and I focused on my left thumb and turned that to white light, and then my index finger, and all of a sudden, instead of having just 2 cents worth of energy going to sleep, I'd wake up with 8 cents. And so I was restoring myself bit by bit by bit. And I got to a certain point where I'm like, oh, actually, I'm pretty good right now. But then I noticed that if my team was having a bad day, I'm having a bad day. So I had to be energetic enough to pour into their cup. And that's where I learnt the distinction between servanthood and servitude. Because I always associated servanthood with servitude, like you're less than somebody. And I thought, well, I've worked too hard to be here. I'm no one's Brubitch, right? But that's when I discovered something called the ego bridge, because I couldn't drop my ego unless I saw myself benefit. So I asked myself, well, I'm just the lowest ranked private. What can I do to build those people up around me? And I did have a supply of coffee. And I thought, well, I could make people's coffee, but that's when I got stopped, because I knew that if I did an act of service to another kind of alpha male that might have been a bit insecure, that they'd say, well, you're the Brubitch now. And for me to drop that ego, I called it the ego bridge. The second I dropped my ego, I could walk across it to anywhere I wanted to get to, and I thought, well, what the hell are we fighting for if not freedom? Maybe I had to come to this place to realize, to ask the question, who did I want around me when good times turn bad? Do I want fatigued, lethargic men, or do I want, switched on, powerful men? And I'm like, well, this has happened for a reason. If I was in a place where I could surround myself with comfort, I could avoid asking myself this question. I could avoid, I could keep my ego, keep my way of doing things, because obviously I'm right, okay? And so I thought, well, no, I'm going to make coffee. And so I made coffee. I got called the Brubitch, but there's a certain convenience in living close quarters to everybody. So I'd drop off this, container. Hey, Brubitch. And then you'd watch them drink this coffee, and they'd take the first sip and they're like, oh, that's actually really good coffee. And they'd sip it again, and then you'd see these broad shoulders just relaxing and opening up and taking this big breath of air. And I saw that beforehand they were arguing amongst themselves, right? But then around this coffee, it was just this little thing that happened where the argument stopped. Everything just stopped. They were back home in Australia having a coffee at a cafe in the middle of a war zone. They had that peace. And then before I knew it, a whole collective of people would get together and have this coffee. And it wasn't just coffee, there was conversations, there was communications, there was resources being allocated. And I'm like, my survivability, if I'm just looking at this from survivability, my survivability is going up because everyone's a whole lot more cohesive. And that's when I saw it, the power of servanthood, creating a space for others to become more powerful, and then benefiting myself, benefiting everyone there. But yeah, being pretty thick-skinned, I had to go to that place to get rid of the stuff that was stopping me stepping into that service to others.
And it not only changed your attitude, but them as well. Tim, you talked about 2011 before and when you went to the psychologist, and then I think it was 2020 when everything went
Oh yeah,
to shit.
yeah.
Like, so can you talk me through that, because
Sure.
I'm sure it'll help other people.
Well, this time it wasn't a war zone in Afghanistan. There was a war zone going off in my head. I just gotten a divorce.
So you'd been suffering for all those years
Well,
since you'd been back? Or?
Yes, but you know, there's the suffering from service, but then you know, divorce has this special space of its own. You know, the masculine and feminine.
Do you reckon that contribute, like what you went through?
Oh no, absolutely
contributed to that. Sorry,
absolutely.
But...
And I wasn't owning my side of things, and it's funny, since I've gotten divorced and I've done a lot of sort of personal development work. It's funny how when you clear your wounds from inside yourself, how much better you can get along with people outside yourself. And yeah, so I don't call my ex-wife my ex-wife. I call her my then wife. I stand for a positive, future with her. I had Christmas breakfast with her and the kids. We still. It wasn't always like that, but now we have like a working relationship. But the time of the divorce, call it a COVID divorce, that was another really low point where I'd lost my house, my home, money, regular access to kids. I was sleeping on the couch of my parents' place, and 3 a.m. I'm not sleeping. And this is the thing where even though I was a breathwork coach and I knew breathwork would activate what's called my parasympathetic nervous system, my ability to slow down and relax. It's like a car. You can accelerate and you can hit the brake. But it was like my brain wouldn't let me because of all the stress. And I liken it to, like, my mind was like a garden, and whatever you water grows. And I was watering the weeds of stress, and they grow to a certain size where they, like, eyeballs pop out of them and they become sentient. And they know the things that you do that feed them, and they know the things that you do that starve them. And the stress weeds in my head had no interest in me doing breath work because that would kick them out. And it's like I could not breathe. And I was about to do self-harm. I was about to hit the bottle, pills, both. And I just looked at my left thumb. I said, Tim, you can take one breath. Just take one fucking breath. And I drove it into my chest. And it was like the first breath I've ever taken. Okay, take two. I stuck 2 fingers into my chest. Holy shit, this is working. Take 3. 3 fingers. 5 fingers. 10. And then somewhere between 15 and 25, those stress weeds got kicked out. And the rest of my brain says, Tim, thank goodness you kicked those guys out. This is working. Keep doing it. And it was in that really low moment that I realized that, I was at both times my own worst enemy, but also my own savior. I'm sure in a lot of other dimensions, there was a Tim that took pills and drank a lot and is possibly still drinking to this day. But on that night, I made a choice to, do the work myself. Yeah.
That must have been so hard for your mum and dad to sit by, and watch you hit such a low point in your life, and you would...
Oh yeah, and they are highly religious people. For them, it was like a God-ordained thing that marriages don't break up, so there was all that going on. You know what I mean? Yeah. But in that space, I'm all about, when I get really emotional, it's all about Tim. Yeah. So I probably wasn't as aware of the impacts, outside of me, and potentially that was potentially the cause of the breakdown, the fact that I was so inside my own head that I wasn't aware of, the impacts on my then wife. I wasn't going to be one of those guys that spend the rest of his life blaming the partner, because I saw if I did that, I will be doomed to repeat the same thing if I'm blaming somebody else. Like this thing of, why is this thing always happening to me? Yeah.
Tim, so you developed breathwork in bed, and you've recently brought an app out. And I hadn't tried tried it until last night.
Really?
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry to say I hadn't.
Oh,
But I honestly had the best night's sleep. I slept like a log. And when I woke up this morning, and I intended to do the breathwork in bed morning session, and I just thought, oh, I think I just want to go back to sleep. But then I remembered in your book, which I've been thinking about, that about your energy, and you wake up and, you know, that voice in your head says, no, let's just skip the gym today, or let's skip this today. And I thought, no, I'm going to wake up properly, you know, and it made me feel alive. Like, you sort of, the steps that you took me through.
oh so you
I
did
did
do
it
this?
this morning.
Oh, right,
I
okay.
did. Of course I did it.
Okay,
Tim.
right, okay, right.
And, you know, it started with my eyes, and, you know, when you do wake up, you rub your eyes, but I hadn't put two and two together, that you're actually waking your eyes up, and you're waking your jaw up, and you're waking your whole system up. It was amazing. And then I got up and went for a swim, and I felt incredible and very energetic. So tell me about breathwork in bed.
Well, firstly, I just want to say it means a lot to me to have someone like yourself have access to their own sovereign resources, you know, because you've got that now, you know, and I can't do what you do, but if I can help you sleep better, get out of bed better, you're going to bring your gifts into the world. So this app, I've been the one where I'm like, oh, something's wrong, I've got to fix it. So I've done this big, you know, whether it's a 12-week challenge, whether it's a big seminar, you know, powerful and positive stuff, but a week later, everything goes back to normal. So I've found that, especially if people are fatigued, you've got to give them small, easy things that just make them feel better. Or that felt better, I'll do more. That was nice, more please. That was nice, more please. So breathwork in bed is for people that are having trouble sleeping, and often when people are fatigued, they say, look, here's just what I want, take care of it for me. So the breathwork in bed app asks two simple questions. When do you want to sleep? When do you want to wake up? And then it just falls out of your phone with these notifications that you just tap and press play. So it's made to meet people where they are. Because what really annoys me is so many people talk about the importance of sleep. Great, I know that. I'm sleep deprived. What have you got for me? Oh, you got pills? That's no different to anyone else. But what I like about breathwork, it is the fastest way to access wonderful sleep, but as well as it's a real game changer getting out of bed and just using your willpower to force your body out, but then actually connecting to your body, unlocking all that stuck energy, turning that feeling of lead into gold, you know, complete game changer. And if you can do that, you know, as you go to sleep and as you wake up, instead of, you know, struggling to go to sleep and struggling to get out of bed, if you can turn that struggle into feeling amazing, then you're going to be able to do that over time, because good sleep is like bad sleep. There's an accumulation effect. The longer you sleep well, there's so many healing things that happen. Just like one bad night's sleep, they're showing has the equivalent to some sort of brain trauma with the damage it can do. So understanding the ease of which something can happen, that's why I made the app. So anyone who's, because people don't want to have, people are already tired enough, and they've kind of overdone stuff, so they're tired, so they just want something just to make it easy and effortless. That's what the app does. And people are genuinely surprised at just how powerful their own lungs are. I you know, more than this, I don't see myself as a breathwork coach, and the app is there to introduce you to the love of your life. You know, your breath is going to be the closest friend, your nearest ally, the most powerful thing in the corner. It's going to be there when you go to sleep. It's going to be there when you wake up, and every aspect in your life is benefited from proper breathing, just like every part of your body is impacted from improper breathing. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Oh, and I know exactly what you're saying, because when I'm stressed, I breathe here, and I suddenly think I've been forgetting to breathe. And like, I could go, you know, if I'm particularly stressed, I could go weeks and think I haven't been breathing. But now I'm so much more conscious of it. And I imagine my breath going down to my belly and going out, and from here I know everything's going to be all right. You know, it's just an amazing feeling. But you have to remember and consciously do it. And I guess eventually, you know, it becomes your subconscious, and you find you're doing it without even realising.
Well, the problem with breathing and breath work is that it's our oldest habit. Okay, we've been doing it our whole lives. So breath work isn't hard, but breaking a habit is hard. So that's why the app is there to guide you to do it a certain way, and then it'll become like a conscious experience. But the power of our breath, before we were sentient creatures putting paintings on rock walls, we were breathing. Before we were speaking, we were breathing. This deep ancient wiring lives inside of us, and we can access it. You know, you might even call this the Garden of Eden before we got the fruit of knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay? So breath work is such a birthright, and if you can access all those incredible resources inside of yourself, you become a sovereign person. Imagine giving yourself everything you need before you leave the house. So the rest of your day is just a victory lap. You know, I don't have to do anything. I choose to do it. I've given myself everything, and if something takes from me, I can just put it back in.
Just remarkable, Tim. I with the Breathwork in Bed app, generosity is a huge part of it. And so I want to get the background on that, because I loved hearing the story about how you grew up, and you know, about your mum, and please include the story about the gerbera.
Okay, sure.
I just love
you called me on. See, I don't normally talk about this one because being generous is a bit of a stretch too far, but I believe powerful people are generous people. But for years, I gave of myself, I didn't give of my abundance, because I grew up with very generous parents. They worked with the Australian Aboriginals in a time when there was no government funding. It was just hearts of service. And as much as I respected it, I couldn't do that. And what nobody knew is when I was, you know, saving those 40 veteran lives, when I was working in the veteran charity, was every 6 or 7 weeks I'd have to hit the bottle really hard for 3 days, because I was giving of myself and I wasn't giving of my abundance. I was using helping others as an opiate, something to make me feel good because I'm a bit messed up. So now my favorite saying is, I don't give of myself, I give of my abundance. So once people start getting out of fatigue, oh, that thing felt good, I want to do more of that. That thing felt good, I want to feel more of it. We ask a question, you know, would you like to double the energy and connection you're feeling right now? Then consider the possibility that connecting to another human, doing an act of generosity, will give you more energy, but do it from your abundance. So I couldn't be generous the way my parents were, and I tried for years and I kept failing. The example of my mum being generous was I was in her backyard, and she had this lovely gerbera in a pot. And I said, "Oh, Mum, you bought a gerbera?" She's like, "No, I found a pot." I'm like, "What is Mum talking about?" So I asked, I'm like, so what do you mean you bought a pot? And she's like, "Well, I just knew something was good in there. I watered it for 6 weeks, and then that came out." I'm like, like, you know what I mean? Like, heart of generosity, you know. And some people are wired like that.
You talked about you felt like sometimes they were, or a lot of the time, they were being taken advantage of.
Oh yeah,
so.
yeah. Like they would have people bashing on their door at 3 a.m. demanding certain things, you know. And there was a lot of violence in that space as well. It was kind of normalized, but I guess what I learned from that was, if I'm just adequate and I give someone 10%, there's a part of me that goes, well, look, I'm down to 90%. You better do something with that 10%. There's an attachment to that person acting a certain way. But if I connect to myself powerfully first and I'm at 500%, I can give 20% away a day consistently. And it doesn't matter if people love it, hate it, tell me to F off. I'm in touch with something so much more powerful. So generosity is a real expression of your own individual self. You know, give whatever you have a lot of. So it's very easy for me. I'm a physical dude. I can give generosity physically. I'm always helping old ladies in the shops, taking the neighbours' bins in, picking up cigarette butts. These sorts of things are my acts of generosity, easy and effortless. And I notice the things that I can do easy and effortless, I do regularly. So part of the app is once people start getting connected inside of themselves, they're offered an opportunity to connect outside of themselves. And we have this, what's called a generosity news wall, where people can post up their acts of generosity. And, the world I want to live in is, on my phone, I get a notification that, Ken from Cairns took his neighbour's bins in. Bruce from Brisbane bought his mum a coffee. Because empowered and connected people, we have the numbers, but we don't have the spotlight. So when someone's telling me, hey, it's a terrible world, I'm like, are you saying that with your mouth, or is that the TV and the news speaking through you? Okay? So I cut up all mainstream media years ago because I noticed it really made me apathetic and not want to make any effort because it's all gone to hell anyway. So I wanted to change the narrative on the news, and I want to give the spotlight to the empowered and connected people out there, because like I said, we've got the numbers, but we don't have the spotlight. I want to flip that metric.
Tim, I've loved talking to you, and your book is Fight, Flight, Feel, and the app is Breathwork in Bed. So where can they find the book?
Look, you can go to my website and you can get in fact, we're doing a promotion, free copies, just pay for postage. But if you get anything from this engagement, remember that little 3 breath thing, because that's going to be your best friend. But also get your phone out, put in 3 words in the App Store, Breathwork in Bed. It'll ask you when you want to sleep, when you want to wake up. We'll take care of the rest. There's a 28-day free trial, so you can give it a go. But if you can improve your sleep, there's not a thing in your world that won't be improved as well. And I've made the app super easy for people to do that. And I'm always amazed when people come back a week later and go, oh my gosh, it works. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, it works. And you tried it for the first time last night, so it's going to get better. It'll get better and better and better and better.
And it was so powerful this morning too. So, Tim, thank you. I think I want to meet your mother.
Sure. Yeah, I can bring her along.
She sounds like an amazing woman. I had someone like that in my life too, and she was just so giving, and I've tried to have her compass as my life and or in my life, and I know I've failed miserably compared to what Cole Bradley did for us, but my sister and I, but and her whole family. It was just, very, very
the power that they have, they don't even know they have, just from being the person they're born to be.
Yeah, and even when they're not on Earth anymore, still follows through them.
Yep.
Tim, thank you.
No worries.
It's been really lovely. Thank you so much. I'm glad you came in. I'm glad I went back and met you at the airport that day.
Me too.
Great. Thank you.